Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's the morning of Monday, 21st of May, 2018, and it's a stunningly beautiful morning up here at the Cloudbridge Reservoir, just a few miles to the south of Burnley in East Lancashire. And I've spent the weekend exploring the moors around East Lancashire and West Yorkshire. And what can I say? It's a stunningly beautiful area. And I can only think that there must have been something else going on Saturday, because basically the moors were empty. Had the place pretty much to ourselves. And to this morning, we have a beautiful clear blue sky. It seems that the flight paths are not crossing this part of northern England today, and can enjoy this beautiful, beautiful early spring, well, it's a mid-spring now, isn't it, but spring morning. And well, the title of this morning's broadcast is Fracking with Democracy. And as I said last week, the announcements in Parliament by Greg Clark and James Brokenshire got a lot of people in a state of panic. This threat to remove all local participation from the decision-making process for unconventional gas exploitation, i.e. fracking. Now, ironically, this is exactly the gameplay that I spelt out during the Fractured Future Tour in 2013. It's not rocket science, it was just predicting how the game would unfold. And once communities started to become aware of the magnitude of the threat that unconventional gas exploitation would bring to their community, then they would rise up, and it would become increasingly difficult for local planning authorities to pass these permissions without incurring the wrath of the local population. And that's, of course, exactly what we saw in Lancashire, where Saeed Javid effectively just said, you know what, local democracy, we're only going to tolerate local democracy when the elected representatives in those locations make the right decision, i.e. the decision that we are instructing, we want them to make from central government. And if they don't make that decision, then we're going to effectively take the decision-making process away. And, the other observation is that, this is made by the unconventional gas industry, is that it is totally inappropriate for local councils and local planning committees to make these decisions, especially when the planning officers recommend that they be accepted. Well, let's have a look at, how the unconventional gas industry actually manipulates the planning officers. And we need look no further than Stuart Perigo, who was the planning officer for Lancashire County Council when the planning committee rejected Quadrilla's application to drill and frack at both Prestonby Road and Rossiter, despite Stuart Perigo, and Perigo is an interesting one because, of course, that means danger in Portuguese, but Perigo was recommending that they be accepted. And now that decision for Prestonby Road has been overruled. Where's Stuart Perigo? Oh, on the payroll of INEOS and iGas, and effectively speaking on their behalf at public inquiries. So on that basis, why would you ever rely on the statement of a planning officer when you are more than capable of doing your own research and making your own decisions? The planning officers are there obviously to help, to provide information when it's requested, but ultimately it is for the planning committee to make that decision, regardless of whether the planning officer says, yep, this is something that I don't think we can object to. It's not your ultimate decision. Well, of course, the industry has put enormous pressure on the government, and not least Jim Ratcliffe of INEOS. Enormous pressure to initiate public inquiries because the local authority are not seen to be reacting fast enough. And that, of course, is getting the backs up of the local community. And now last week, the industry thinks that it has won a massive victory by getting Greg Clark and James Brockenshire to announce that there will be a consultation prior to effectively removing all local participation in the decision-making process for fracking. That the need for this gas is so crucial that it will be regarded as a national infrastructure project, and basically the message to the local communities is frack you. Well, you know, basically, apart from the fact that Greg Clark is originally a Teesside boy, these MPs represent Tunbridge Wells and Sidcup and Bexley in Kent. So, you know, their areas are not exactly being targeted for fracking, are they? So they're not going to be getting too much pressure one way or the other from their constituents. Now, what is interesting is that Kevin Hollinsnake, the MP for Moulton and Thirsk in North Yorkshire, he has stepped into the fray and said, oh, this is terrible. This is really terrible. We mustn't be taking away local democracy. Well, you took it away when you refused to represent the interests of your constituents. So basically, you want to be seen to be the one participating in the process, but you don't want to represent your constituents. You want to represent the corporatocracy. Well, Greg Clark and James Brockenshire have done the anti-fracking community a massive favour here. And it has stimulated discussion, it stimulated debate. And I think that, you know, the attitude of the industry is, you know what? People aren't going to step up to the plate. And basically, if they don't step up to the plate, then they don't deserve the opportunity to be involved in the process. Well, that's exactly the sort of response, of course, that you would expect from a socio-psychopathic industry that really is only interested in the extra bucks that a few people at the top of the organisation can make, whilst, of course, milking everybody else and literally condemning them to lives in the sacrifice zones. And, you know, we don't have to look too far, do we, to see the impact that that's going to have. So this is the time to really step up to the plate. You know, we've had the two Conservative MPs that have been very much on point here, Kevin Hollinsnake and Lee Rowley, and both have said that they are going to counter this proposition and express their concern. Well, you know, just maybe enough Tory MPs might start to realise that this is just the thin end of a very fat wedge, and if they could take away the local input on decisions such as this, then what else are they going to take away the local input from? So it really is time through the summer to step up the game, because I really do sense that Greg Clark and James Brockenshire want our help. They need our help. They need the help of the people. They need the people to participate. Now, this goes totally against the grain of neoliberal corporatism, where the attitude is, no, we don't want them to participate. We want to be taking decisions at a central level. In fact, the corporations need to be taking the decisions and simply telling the local authorities, you know, what it is that they're going to be doing. So never before, perhaps, has there been so much necessity for local communities to step up and participate in the process. It doesn't mean becoming an activist in the sense of the word. It means participating and doing whatever you feel is necessary to participate in the process. And once you participate in this, and we are successful, the collective we, are successful in shutting this abomination down, then who knows, people might actually start to realise that participation in local affairs is crucial, because otherwise the corporatists will simply ride roughshod, and they just don't care about the minority view, but they might just care if a significant chunk of the population says, you know what, we're going to let you know that we're very unhappy about this, but ultimately, if you persist, then there will be civil disobedience. And the reality is that civil disobedience becomes an absolute necessity. And in fact, it becomes a duty. when the corporations start to sense that they have the upper hand. And they only have the upper hand because of the apathy within the communities that they're targeting. So there's many other issues, of course. And, really, it doesn't matter what you get involved in, but the essential ingredient here is participation. Now, last week, in fact, a week ago today, was the Centrica AGM. And somehow it seems that the anti-fracking community might have missed a trick. Either that, or I was otherwise engaged in North Nottinghamshire, but I didn't see any reports of any presence at the Centrica AGM. Now, Centrica are really struggling in the wider scheme of things. Their share price is around about, well, it's less than a third of, no, it's about a third of what it was 4 years ago. It's around about £1.40, whereas it was pushing £4 in 2013, 2014. They are hemorrhaging customers at the rate of well over 500,000 in the past 12 months. But they're still rolling out smart meters, and they're cost cutting, and every time they announce a cost cut, then the stock price goes up because the market perceives that as more falling through to the bottom line, therefore more profitability. But Centrica is not in great shape. In fact, it was reported by one news agency as the least popular company in the UK. Well, it may be that in some quarters, particularly in Lancashire, but it's not necessarily that on a wider basis. In fact, still few people have heard of Centrica, despite the fact that it owns British Gas and has the lion's share of consumers on its books, despite the fact they're leaving in droves. But Centrica, along with AJ Lucas in Australia, are the two primary financiers of Quadrilla at Preston New Road. And Quadrilla right now are still the only company in the UK, thanks to the support from Centrica and AJ Lucas, they're the only company in the UK that has the potential to frack this side of the end of the year. Now, we know that the track record in this country is 100% failure rate. And of course, Quadrilla's track record is a 100% failure rate. But it's not really appropriate to sit back and wait until Quadrilla screw up, which they will. At some point, they will. Greg Clark and James Brockenshire are absolutely, I think, relying on the fact that Quadrilla will mess up in some way, shape or form, and it will help bring this whole sorry industry to its knees and bury it extremely deep in the ground and let them get on with the real business of politics, if you like, which of course is screwing the NHS, perhaps. So it really is time again to focus on Centrica. And, it's a company that is struggling. Ian Conn, the chief executive, saw his pay halved last year, halved to a paltry £1.7 million. How did you ever survive on that last year, Mr. Conn? Well, so I'm just going to let the cyclist ride past me there. Well, the bottom line is that we can help him halve his salary yet again by, of course, encouraging even more people to leave Centrica and to recognise Centrica's role in focusing on their support for the unconventional gas industry, i.e. Quadrilla. And once Quadrilla goes south, then, well, not literally, metaphorically that is, once Quadrilla goes south, then the reality is that it will bring renewed focus on whether or not this is a viable industry. And as we are seeing the cost of renewables, the cost of battery technology continue to fall, then obviously the attraction of this industry becomes less and less and less. And then, of course, what we're going to be left with is focusing on the likes of Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos. But I sense that if we are able to raise the game and get people to understand what's at stake here in terms of the wider issue of local democracy, then we might just be on the cusp of pulling the nails together to get the lid on this coffin once and for all. So tomorrow, I'm going to head back south. I think later today, I'm going to have a little more time up here in East Lancashire, but I'm going to head south. And tomorrow afternoon in the House of Lords, Professor Stiles is going to be giving a presentation regarding his recommendation not only to formally implement the 500-metre exclusion zone from residential properties for any kind of frack site, but also to implement an exclusion zone of 850 metres between any frack site and a major fault, geological fault. And he's also demanding that the companies, the unconventional gas companies, show their research to prove that they have established the location of those geological faults. And of course, we know that Quadrilla didn't do that in 2011 when they inadvertently fracked into a fault which they claimed wasn't on their geological charts, and that is believed to be what actually triggered the seismic events in 2011, which led to the moratorium being put in place until December 2012. So if you're interested in hearing what Professor Stiles has to say and helping then to share that information around, because otherwise it's going to be probably restricted to Hansard or maybe a drill or drop report. But if you want to get along there, then go along to the House of Lords committee rooms tomorrow for 2 o'clock. Now, I'm going to be heading south and then down to the southwest before heading back up to Nottinghamshire next weekend. But if you have the opportunity to lend support on the ground, then please get along to Preston New Road or to Tinker Lane, which is on the A634 just to the southeast of Blythe in Nottinghamshire, and help those communities to resist this pernicious industry which is determined to frack democracy and frack your community in the process. So meanwhile, you have a great day. Let's hope that the aircraft trails stay away today and that we are able to enjoy these beautiful clear blue skies, which sadly, the days when we get these clear blue skies seem to be becoming fewer and fewer. And yet I don't see too many people talking about the pollution of these aircraft trails and the impact that that is having on the climate. Meanwhile, you have a great day, and I will catch with you tomorrow at 8:30. Catch you then.